Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I've stopped sharing my screen so I can look at all your lovely hidden faces. Oh, some familiar faces popping up. There we go. That's better. Right, I also stopped sharing just in case I opened up another window and shared something that I shouldn't, including the programme for today, which I was just, or this afternoon, which I was just looking through. So a big welcome to you all, wherever you're joining us from. I've already seen in the chat there's a good afternoon, good morning. I've not yet seen a good evening, but that's not to say there isn't one. I have been handed on the baton from Melissa and colleagues in the Asia Pacific Continental Division. They have earned some time to go to bed. I think, given all the sessions that they have facilitated, starting off at midnight my time earlier on today. So well-deserved rest for them. So you have me to take you through the next few hours. And we have a fantastic programme lined up this afternoon, starting off with colleagues from University College London, who I'll introduce in a second. And it's always a relief to see the names of people who are due to present appear on the participants list. So that's the first panic over. So great to see you all. Then we're going to, following on from that, we're going to have a session led by Luke Phillimore and Linda Spinks, who many of you will know. And for those of you who don't, you'll get to know them well later on this afternoon. And then we're going to have a break, and then a session from Shipra Kulkarni from Seneca Polytechnic in Canada. And then we've got Bill Bowser live with us at the moment, but we're actually going to be looking at a recording of a session that Bill did with Chris Shannon a while ago. But Bill will be on hand to answer any questions following on from that session live. So I'll talk you through that once we get to that point. So that's pretty much what we're going to be doing this afternoon. So I'm going to just introduce our speakers, but before I do, if you have any questions for our speakers this afternoon, please use the chat function. We will have time for questions at the end of each session, and so we can use that, and I will monitor that and deal with that as they arise. I encourage you to participate as much as you possibly can. So the first session this afternoon is, let me just get this thing up again. The title is Herding Projects, a CI Team's Guide to Balancing Priorities. Fantastic title. As I said earlier, it's colleagues from UCL who are with us. So I'm going to start off with Helen. So Helen Brown is Head of System Configuration and Automation at UCL. With extensive experience in HR systems and operations within HE. She's passionate about harnessing technology, particularly automation, AI, and systems integration to solve complex business challenges, and also to deliver more efficient, compliant, and user-focused services. Helen specialises in connecting people and process with technology to streamline operations and enable smarter ways of working. Welcome to Helen. Sam Harrison is a continuous improvement manager in the Service Excellence Department at UCL. With a background in organisational change and process improvement, Sam is passionate about helping teams work smarter, make informed choices, and deliver real value for students and staff. At UCL, Sam leads initiatives that build capability and continuous improvement, support data-driven decision-making, and foster a culture of collaboration and learning across professional services and beyond. Drawing on 9 years of experience in the HE sector, Sam brings a practical and people-centred approach to tackling complex challenges. And last but not least, Shane Dowell is Head of Continuous Improvement Team at UCL. where he leads work to help universities overcome operational challenges to focus on what truly matters, delivering world-class education, research and services. With over a decade of experience in change and CI across the HE sector, Shane is passionate about developing high-performing transformation teams and supporting the growth of future change leaders. He combines strategic thinking with practical delivery to help institutions operate more effectively and with purpose. So that's enough for me. Welcome to our presenters, and I will hand over to you, and hopefully you have the capacity to share on Teams. You should have that, hopefully. So over to you.
Great, thanks very much, John. Can you all hear me okay? Great, it's nothing. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, maybe wherever in the world you are. It's a pleasure for me and my colleagues to be here to join you for this international conference. We're very excited to share some work that we've done here at UCL on what is a common problem we have in change transformation in the CI world, really, which is, we have finite resources in our teams. There's always more work than there is people to do that work. And so the challenge that we've been trying to address here at UCL is how do we make sure that we're deploying our teams, our resources on the highest value work so that we can get the maximum return for our efforts. What we'll talk through in the presentation today is we'll unpack that problem a little bit to share what that looked like from the UCL perspective. We'll talk you through the workflows that we've created and the tooling that we've developed to help us manage and prioritize our work. And we'll also share with you the lessons learned and our next steps as well. And I would say we're very much in the process of evolving this. We've had it live for a few months and we're constantly in the spirit of continuous improvement. We're continually learning, continuously adapting our approach around how we manage this particular problem. So onto the problem. Sam, can you move us to the next slide? Thank you. So here's the problem statement that we were facing at UCL, and this is, I dare say, this is familiar to many of you. Really, what this was about is we have lots of requests coming into the team for work. Those requests can be generated from pretty much anywhere in the organisation by anyone. So we get requests for facilitation support. We get requests from those delivering frontline services for opportunities that they see for improvement. We get involved in tactical projects. We also get involved in larger programmatic pieces of work that are high priority for the organisation. And it constantly presents us with that problem. Look, we've got lots and lots of work coming in, but how do we make sure that we are saying yes to the right high value work? And how do we then say no or not yet to the pieces that we're just unable to accommodate at this point in time? The problem was we didn't really have a joined up process for scooping up those pieces of work, assessing the relative priority of those pieces of work, and then really kind of being open and transparent about how we were undertaking that. So our overall goal with this was to make sure, look, can we get to a position where we've got people on the highest value work and that we have a transparent approach for deciding what work we do so that we can defend our decisions and we can just be open and honest and have that conversation about how the work is getting prioritized and how us as a resource, how we're getting deployed. So move to the next slide, please, Sam. Thank you. So we started off with a fairly simple framework for doing this, and you can see the process diagram there. It's very straightforward what we did. So what we wanted to have was a mechanism, which we'll demo in a moment, through which these requests can be submitted. So those would come from the requester of the work. We need to have a way in which those requests could then be reviewed by those service owners. And the reason for having the service owner as a part of this workflow is because if some work comes up that might be, there might be an individual who's very passionate about a particular thing. But if it doesn't have the support of that service owner, then realistically, we're going to encounter blockers, we're going to encounter issues with it, and it's not really going to get very far at that point. So we wanted to have a mechanism for being able to filter out things that just wouldn't be able to get out of the blocks at that point in the process before we kind of wasted people's time with doing further reviews on them. On the assumption that a piece of work is decided to be a priority for that service, it then comes through to our shared services senior leadership team and the leadership team for the kind of the change capability that we have around that shared services. Those reviews are then requested against those requests are then reviewed against a criteria. And then if they're approved, we then look at that against the work that we've got on at the moment to try to sequence that into our roadmap of activity. So is this something that we have the resource to be able to do now, or is it something that we have to do down the line, or is it such a priority that actually we have to park or pause something else so that we can redeploy the resource on this priority piece? And all through that process, we make sure that we're in touch with the requester so that they get the feedback of what's happening at each of the stages, so they know that their request is being actively looked at, actively reviewed, and that they'll get a decision with a reason for the decision at the end of the process. The way that we do that prioritization, oh, sorry, Sam, just go back to thank you. The way that we do that prioritization is we've got a very straightforward assessment criteria, which we've actually evolved a little more now into a weighted prioritization matrix. But the principles are the same. When we're looking at the work coming in, what we're really trying to understand is this a strategic piece of work that's called out in our organizational strategy? Is there a compliance or legislative driver for it that means we just have to do this, because if we don't, then we could risk fines or worse? Is it going to generate any income or revenue for the university? And the kind of standard stuff, does it make things faster, better, cheaper, or does it de-risk operations? So we're really evaluating the pieces of work that come in through those lenses, and that helps us then give a scoring to the item, give it kind of a relative prioritization position, and then that helps us to make the decision about whether it's a yes right now, a no not yet, or a no. So we've built some tooling to help us with that, which we wanted to demo. So I'll hand you over to Sam now, who's going to walk through how this works within the ESM system. Sam, over to you.
Thank you, Shay. I want to mute that. Can everyone hear me? All good? Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'll now take you through the solution that we've actually built to accommodate this process, which is in our enterprise service management tool known as My Services. Click onto that. So on the self-service portal, this is kind of the one-stop shop where staff and students alike at UCL will go to request any kind of service. So it seemed like the best position place to actually locate this form, especially as it kind of they rolled out at the same time, kind of in parallel, really. So if we search for PS Hub change, we will see the PS Hub change control and prioritization form. Now, it's a really simple form. And one thing to note as a bit of a caveat is that in the initial stages of this, we have limited the coverage of this to just members of the Professional Services Hub. So they're the only people who can actually raise this form. Now, the reason for that is we want to really get an accurate idea of demand before we think about scaling this outwards. So we thought limiting the coverage of the form is something really useful, especially because it's such a different direction culturally in terms of requesting changes. So we thought it's probably a smarter decision to do that rather than a big bang approach. So the foundation of this form basically is to be used to request either system updates. So it could be an update to My HR or an HR information system. It could be an update to My Services. It could be requesting a form for this. It could be for a service or process improvement, or a request for automation to assist you with that process improvement. It could be updating a policy. It could be requesting reporting support from our service performance and analytics team. So the building of a dashboard or Power BI solution. So any of those uses we've incorporated within the request type field here, and dependent on the type of request that you select, you'll get a different set of conditional fields that will appear. And we did a lot of hard work in configuring the fields that we wanted to appear at this stage. And luckily, with the luxury of My Services, we're able to change these quite easily if we find that, you know, certain fields are not kind of working at the time, or not giving us the data and information that we need to make those informed choices. So for the purpose of just this demonstration for now, I have prepared one earlier, so I'll show you that when we get to it. But for now, I'll just put some dummy data in. So we have the change details up here. If it was a process improvement, we had put the title of the change. I would add the details of the proposed change. So it could be information around a problem statement, what impact that might have, or there might be specific requirements or questions that someone might need answering as part of this work. So I'll just put details for now. Maybe paraphrase it. Expected benefits of change. Now, this is something as a PS hub, we're becoming more and more aware, and we're trying to get everybody to do their lean training. So we thought it'd be a good opportunity in this case to kind of put more onus on requesters to actually attempt to justify the benefits of a change before it happens. One of the key problems we had beforehand was you get suggestions for change from a variety of sources, not necessarily backed by data or evidence, and that just put more strain on the CI resource by the time they actually take on the work before they realise, you know, it might not even be something that we want to pursue. So in this case, we've got the option to add in expected benefits of change and really expand on those. So I'll just put test for now. In the request information section, you're asked to outline the business areas that would be impacted. So it could be ISD, it could be HR services, etc. The deadline for delivery, if you know that, that's always going to be a key determiner in terms of the prioritization when we get to that stage. The name of the approver or sponsor. So at the moment, we've got this limited to just members of the extended leadership team within the PS Hub. So because we think they're valid sources of people who'd want to give a first pass approval of any sort of change that we put through. But for presentation's sake, I'll just put myself. Any PS Hub resources that would be required to deliver the change. So obviously we might need some CI resource. We might need customer services to be involved. We might have an automation requirement. Any non-PS Hub dependencies, that could be our IT services division. And then these last two fields are around the scope of the change. So who and or what will be impacted by making the change? You know, is it a specific team? Is it all of UCL? Is it a specific system? We'll go for all of UCL. And what is the agreed output of the change that you expect to happen? So it could be, you know, a complete working new process, request form, etc. So after they submit that form, what will happen is they will get a reference number, which will be emailed to them, and the request itself will sit. Oh, it's doing, you know, it pins it at the top. There we go. So the request itself will arrive in the inbox of, well, it's with Helen actually in this first instance. So this is an example of the type of ticket that comes through. Now, any sign, this is one I prepared earlier, so we'll go into a bit of the detail with this in a second, but I want to highlight the workflow here. So every time this request form is submitted, a workflow which we've designed and built will get triggered. And this workflow, the first thing it will do is it will use an automation rule to detect the approver or the sponsor that was selected in the form. So in this case, it was me, obviously. And the next thing it will do is it will fire off the first approval task automatically to that individual. Now, that individual will pick up that task in their inbox. They'll also receive an email about this. And the email will basically say, you know, please review this change. You've been asked to approve this task. All the details are in the workflow summary. If you decide to approve or reject it, just give it the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Now, the workflow summary will have all of the details of the change. Now, in this example, this is a real example that was put through, and it was for an emeritus status confirmation process. They gave us some really comprehensive information around what the problem is, what the desired output of that project would be, and any specific questions that they wanted answering as part of it. They've also made an attempt to highlight the time to process benefits that we might receive from this kind of change, and any benefits that they've anticipate in relation to user satisfaction. They've highlighted all the dependent departments. So it's a really solid foundation to begin an investigation on when this comes through. But if I was the approver or one of the extended leadership team, if I reject it, the requester would get the reason as to why that has been rejected, and they'd be asked to resubmit. But more often than not, if it's good enough, you'll give it a thumbs up. I approve this request. And once you approve the request, so if we go back to here, And the workflow, it's up here. Here we go. So let's refresh this. You'll see now that this went down a stage because the approver provided their approval at this stage. And this next stage we have is the PS Hub governance stage. So what we've done with this is another task is triggered off, and this task goes to the senior leadership team within the PS Hub. Now, the beauty of this is they would set up a view, and as per the process, what we do is we have every 2 weeks on a fortnightly basis, senior leadership team will get together. They will apply the assessment criteria to the list of tasks awaiting their approval. So all of these tasks at this stage, we can be assured have had a pass from the director before submitting the form. They've had a pass from the service owner or someone within the extended leadership team. So we've already had those 2 kind of validation checks. So we know it's a serious item that we're dealing with. And then they can apply that tertiary assessment criteria to these tasks. So they would work through in sequence. So let's take this one. Again, review the workflow summary. They've got access to that workflow summary again. And then once they've got access to that workflow summary, they would then complete the request or approve the request. That would get shut down. And we've also got a field in there that allows us to track a JIRA reference number. Once in that example that we referenced, what was taken from that was Shane reached out to the requester, had a meeting with them and developed some briefing packs. And then work was allocated and CI resource was allocated from that. The JIRA reference was tracked, and then the remainder of that project was then tracked within JIRA. So everything's audited, everything's logged and time-stamped, and it's had that kind of chain of approvals, which is something that we just did not have the capability to do beforehand. So it's been a real improvement for us so far. And having it in a tool like My Services only gives us more options in terms of integrations and expansion of this. So yeah, it's been really useful for us so far. I will just flick back to slide. And I will pass you over to Helen Brown.
Hi, can you hear me? Hopefully it's okay. All right. So the next steps, thanks, Sam. So the next steps and lessons learned. So as Shane and Sam have mentioned, we've been live a while. It's still a work in progress. It's still within the PS Hub, which is our shared service at the moment. The next thing we'll be looking to do, and the thing we're currently building out, is how we then broaden the use of it across other services, potentially in the longer term. But initially, how do we then integrate this into a project management tool? We use JIRA at UCL, you possibly use different tools, but how do we then start to align the 2 processes? So we'll take it from the process that Sam has gone through. We will take that once items are approved, move them into JIRA. That will then allow us to track the progress. Now, if it's a project that gets approved and gets immediately moved into sort of analysis development, it will go into JIRA. We will break those items down into work packages for delivery. That will allow us to track the progress of each of those work packages and any dependencies that we have, tag items to various delivery teams, because we might need continuous improvement resource, we might need technical resource, we might need resource from elsewhere outside of our control. And then we can reprioritize those items. So inevitably what will happen is we will have a track of work, because I'm sure you're all familiar with. It will be going along, and then suddenly something will come in and we'll need to reprioritize that work as well. And it's about how we can be as flexible and then go all the way back to the original analysis we did and the benefits and the realization to actually reuse the prioritization on those to come back up with a new pipeline of work should we need to. The piece that we're looking to do around JIRA is in the early stages, but we are looking to have that up and running in the next probably 4 weeks. And then we will be using that as a pilot for an end-to-end process so we can track everything from the initiation through to the completion on JIRA. Another thing we're then looking to do is how do we then just continue to review and enhance the process. We've been using it for a while. One of those things is how we continue to embed it So how do we get people, it's quite a large sort of shared service. How do we get people to still think about using it, raising ideas, make sure it's the one route in for work, and then send out reminders, review the process, and as we said, make sure it's just the one funnel then. And we are getting there, but there's still some things that creep around the outside and we have to bring back into that funnel. And then reviewing the process with stakeholders as well is the other thing we need to do. So we've had one review meeting, feedback on the general has been positive, but then we need to enhance it. And the first stage of that, as I said, has happened. We are then looking to evolve how we do the scoring, how we strengthen the weighting, so that when we've got the benefits coming in on the initial request, it's partly then around how do we track that and then track the benefit realisation at the end of it to make sure that the output is as was expected. If it's not, we will go back and obviously review how some of those calculations are working. We will be putting in a period of, as we would expect, period of continuous development and improvement. So as things start to come out, we will flag them in JIRA for review, say 12 months on, and then that will allow us that period of continuous improvement to happen as well. So we are regularly bringing new work in, but also continually evolving what we've already got in the pipeline. And as I said before, potentially expand it beyond the use of the current users as well. So that's the other thing we will be keen to do once we've got it settled and we have it running as a pipeline of work. Lessons learned, a few things. So the calculation of the benefits and the benefit realisation. So ensuring that we have a consistent approach to that benefits calculation. We have a standard approach, but it's making sure that we're validating and realising those benefits as they come through. And then, as I said, embedding and implementing and tracking the benefits post-implementation so that we get the realisation at the end of that process. And then that period of continuous improvement to embed as well. It's already there, it's just how we evolve that as time goes on. The other lesson learned is embedding the process. So making sure we've got regular reviews with the people that are involved in the process. We're regularly tracking where the progress is. If we've got blockers in that process, do we need to do reprioritization? Do we need to change the direction we're moving in? Because other things, as we said, inevitably come in, and you can have great plans and something will come in and completely disrupt them. JIRA will also help us facilitate that. So it's how we now balance the two processes, with the process of the requests versus the output and the JIRA tracking at the end of it. And then just ensuring we've got a consistent use of the process. So we've got one flow of work in, one prioritisation and one benefit realisation at the end. And that is it. Does anybody have any questions for us?
Okay, thank you very much to Shane, to Sam, and to Helen. That was fascinating. Okay, we've got one already from Bob Buckwalter. Do you have actual financial data from the finance department, if there is a singular department, at your fingertips, or do you have to calculate it ad hoc on your own type thing? Just giving an example, but I'll throw that out to you.
So we just decided he was going to answer the question. So we're getting some feedback in the room there. Okay. Yeah, so the way that we calculate the savings is in two ways, really. So one, we don't have a kind of a single sort of data sheet that we work from. We work this out based on the project. So we would look at things like what, for each step of the process, what grade are the people doing that process on, how long did it take them before we did an intervention, and then how long does it take after the intervention, and then we'd work out the difference to give us the kind of the cost of transaction. We're trying to get a little bit more sophisticated with that approach. So where we're using automation, we're factoring in the costs of actually running the automation itself. So how much does that particular solution cost to run? So that we're bearing that in mind when we're working out what the cost per transaction is. We also look at, have there been any actual like cost savings on the back of the work that we've done. So a good example of that is we're doing some work at the moment around parental leaves, and for paternities we've been able to claim back statutory money from HMRC, so that gives us a kind of a hard like financial, it's kind of a saving, but it's also a bit of revenue that we weren't maximizing previously. So those are the kinds of things we look at when we're focusing on the financial benefit of the work that we do. Does that answer the question? Got it, thanks. Yep.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? You know, particularly around the sort of cost savings, financial stuff, I guess, is do you have a defined, agreed time period in which you calculate the financial benefits over, you know, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it may be?
Yeah, so that's something we're actually building out slightly more at the moment. So for us, it's that the initial benefit realisation sort of on a month-by-month, termly, quarterly basis. But it's also at what point do we realise that benefit? So what's the period of time before the full benefit is realised? So obviously it could be incremental, but depending on the scale of the piece of work, it's the benefit realisation. There's also then how long do we track that for before actually the benefit starts to deplete, because it almost becomes a business as usual piece of work, and therefore it's tracked but not necessarily at the level of benefit it was originally brought in to deliver. Because ultimately what you're aiming to do is, certainly with some of the reviews we're doing and the automation, is you know, divert the resource elsewhere to do via, you know, higher volume value pieces of work. So we are currently working on that. So yes, we will be looking at some point to see when that benefit is realised, and then how you track that longer term. But it's something we're currently working on. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I would encourage you to come back and tell us your findings on that once you've done that. That would be fascinating. I encourage people to get their questions in, or you're just going to have to listen to me answering questions. And I'm trying very hard not to sound like an accountant, but one thing that did occur to me was that resource management. So I loved your kind of the technology you're using to capture which parts of other areas of professional services you need to get involved in this. I think that's absolutely key. Is it your team that then tracks the resource management across all the projects going on? Because ultimately there'll be a lot of organisations who are stretched from a resource capacity at the moment. So therefore you obviously can't take on too much. Therefore you need to track your resources.
Yeah, I can talk to that. So what the approach that we take is we work on a termly basis at UCL. So I know what my resource envelope is for each term, and I know what work is has been given the green light for each term. And then essentially I do an exercise whereby I assign individuals or groups of individuals to those pieces of work, and we have estimates for how much of a proportion of somebody's time that particular project is going to take. And then I do a kind of a subsequent exercise where I look at that across what we call basically 2 weekly sprints. So this is our estimate going in, but actually the reality, what does somebody's allocated time look like this week? And also factor in when projects are going to, what the kind of target end date is for them as well. So then I can see over a term, okay, when does somebody have some capacity that frees up, which means we can then take on the other piece of work. So it's kind of constantly going back to the numbers, looking at how those are tracking against the plan, comparing that to the work that's coming in, and trying to kind of, you know, trying to resolve the puzzle essentially. It's an ongoing piece of work that's never done. It's quite interesting and taxing because you're constantly, you know, you've got lots of moving pieces in there, but that does give us a decent level of overview of the resource that we have. And also I think it does facilitate some of those conversations back in the prioritization as well, because you can have, you know, I think it makes those no, not yet conversations easier, because you can say, well, look, you know, this is priority. We can't do it now, but we estimate we'll be able to start this piece of work, you know, whenever it is 4 or 5 weeks down the line, because this person's time will be freed up and we'll assign them to this project. So you can give a little bit more information if you're not able to then start a piece of work immediately.
Excellent, thank you. So people are fed up with me talking, so the questions are coming in thick and fast now. We've got one from Graham Jilks. Do you know your average lead time from submission to starting or indeed rejecting the work? He's asking, as although he recognises the need for transparency of stages and approvals, it tends to come at the expense of dynamic action, particularly where a committee has to sit in cycle for a decision.
Yeah, so we have a leadership team which sits within the PS Hub, and predominantly because it's sitting in that area at the moment, although we do feed in projects from elsewhere. We actually have a weekly catch up and a touch base on have any new items been submitted. We quickly review them. Do we think that we've got enough information to move this to the next stage, i.e. investigation or a technical development or an automation build? If we think we've got enough, we will, and we think it fits within the parameters of what it is we're trying to deliver at this time, then we will approve it and move it on. So normally they will move within a week. If there is then a question, the requester will get a response back with further questions, and then we meet regularly, and any that are still in progress get reviewed on that weekly basis. So that's how they get moved on. So at the moment, initially, yes, when we started it, we were a bit slower in responding. We've now got weekly meetings around it. If we don't need to meet, we don't meet. And then what tends to happen is if we've got something that comes in and it almost needs to just leapfrog everything because it's more urgent, then we'll just, you know, have a meeting outside of the normal and agree we just need to progress with it. And sometimes the paperwork catches up alongside it. So we know what's going on. It then obviously changes, as Shane said, he's got his resource plan. It might change his plan. It might change the plan on my side in terms of the technical development team as well. And then we do dynamically respond to those things as we go along. So
excellent, thank you. And just I should have said I'm reading out all the questions just for the benefit of the recording, because we won't be able to see. So. Nice and straightforward one from Stuart. Have you experienced it being a place for people to moan?
Not yet, no. Fortunately, we haven't experienced that yet. No, I mean, most stuff that comes through is pretty constructive. It's people asking for a process review or a system or an automation. We have the information on there. As I said, sometimes we just have to go back for more information. That slows it down a bit. But no, we've not had too much moaning on there yet. No, yeah. Well, unfortunately.
As Shane has highlighted, I love the word of use, yet. You know, it's very much well, I'm sure it's not just a British culture, but it's very well. Oh, it's going to come, definitely going to come. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. One from Joe: is the requester able to track where the request is in the workflow after submission?
Yes, the requester is able to see that. So one of the good things about my services. And it's solved one of the real bugbears we had with our former service management tool, which was a lack of visibility of a request from a customer's perspective. You know, it's really hard to see where in the process you know, their request was. So what that led to is people getting quite angry, oftentimes sending you know, hundreds of chaser emails. Who's dealing with my issue? And that visibility is not just from the customer's perspective, but also for the agent as well. It's quite easy for them to see because we've got tasks that fire off to different teams that all stem to one parent request. We now have that visibility, so you can see exactly what task has been assigned and who it's with. So the requester, all they need to do is update, add a note onto the main request, and that'll get routed directly to the individual who the task is assigned to, and then it's their responsibility and the onus is on them to provide them with a bit of an update. So yeah, again, one of the main reasons why my services is a really good candidate for this particular process.
Excellent, thank you. And a question from Bill, that he's found in his role as a university administrator that senior administrators often push their projects to the top of the project list. Any way that your system would help prevent this power grab?
So at the moment, we're not experiencing too much of that, and partly because that's where we have the benefit, the matrix, the tracking, where we're putting the weighting on it as well. So we do also have some high priority projects at the moment that are tracking, you know, at a slightly different rate to some other pieces. Yes, it's always a risk, and I think part of that is understanding what the benefit is, and the realization on that as well. So we prioritize that. That's not the only reason. There is also things like risk factors. So that whole sort of matrix will have benefit versus risk versus technical debt versus build, or how long it would take to review it. So at the moment, no, we haven't experienced it. That's not to say we're not going to experience it in the future. And I think we will have to just tackle that as and when it happens. But hopefully, if we've got enough metrics and everything behind it, then we will have the evidence to be able to move with the things that will benefit the larger university as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Yeah, thank you. And I guess just a very brief follow-up on that. When you were talking through, it seemed that leadership group have been involved. You've not just come up with this yourself, you have involved. So in a sense, they've helped set this up, and therefore you would hope that there'd be an element of respect for what they have helped to create.
Yeah, so we've got the initial sort of service excellence team that does that sort of first analysis and decides whether we go ahead or don't. Then we've got, if we can't make that decision, it would go up to the PS Hub leadership team, so the leadership team of the self-service. And therefore they will then make that decision where we need to do the reprioritization of pieces as well. And then those people then obviously report in elsewhere as well. So that helps with being able to escalate that prioritization if we need to make sure we are doing things in the right order.
Excellent. Well, listen, that's there's no more questions. So all that's left for me to say is thank you, the three of you, very much. I found that absolutely fascinating. Thank you for giving up your time to share with us your journey. And as I said earlier, I would love you to come back, either an international conference, or I'm sure Linda would absolutely bite your hand off to 6 months from now, 12 months from now, how you're getting on with all of the plans you have to take this forward even more. So thank you very much indeed. Okay, so that sets us up very nicely for, and I'll just give our next two speakers time to prepare themselves and get everything they need at their fingertips. So we're moving straight on to our next presentation, and it is called, and again, another lovely title, the Methodology Mashup, Creating Venn for Lean and Change Management in Higher Education. So another, as I said, another great title. And who have we got to take us through that? Well, we have Luke Phillimore and Linda Spinks. So Luke has recently joined De Montfort University as Head of Change and Continuous Improvement. Previously, Luke was Associate Director of Change at the University of Nottingham, where he enabled the people side of change for their strategic investment portfolio, with a focus on CI and operational excellence. He applies Lean Six Sigma methodologies to drive measurable change and enhance service delivery within HE. Luke is also the network lead for the Change Network at the Association of Higher Education Professionals in the UK, where he champions proactive change leadership and fosters collaboration across the sector. He regularly delivers presentations at national conferences on topics including rapid improvements at events and the role of professional services in institutional change. His work emphasises the human dimension of transformation, advocating for approaches that empower individuals and build capacity for sustainable improvement. Luke is committed to developing a robust evidence base of case studies that demonstrate the impact of change initiatives led by HE professionals. So welcome, Luke. And also Linda Spinks. Linda has worked at the University of Cambridge since 2004 as a business analyst, process improvement lead, and more recently as continuous improvement lead within the Change and Programme Management Office. She is a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt and Lean Competency LCS accredited trainer, and has been delivering training in process improvement to staff across the Collegiate University since 2017. In addition to this, she has worked with many teams to help them improve their processes. Away from Cambridge, she has worked with a number of other universities and not-for-profit organisations to deliver accredited Lean training. She's an active member of the Lean HE global community, as co-chair of the England and Wales Steering Group, vice-chair of the European Group, and a member of the Global Steering Group. She has contributed to 2 books in collaboration with colleagues in the community and hosted the 2024 International Lean HE Conference. We would never forget that, Linda. It was a fantastic conference. So that's enough for me. So over to Linda and Luke to take us through.
Thanks, John. It's surprising what your bio says when it gets read out to you, and slightly embarrassing as well. So I'll start sharing my slides and take you through our presentation. So this is going to be me talking for a bit, and then it's going to be Linda talking and taking us through to the end of the session. Linda, if you want to chip in at any point, just do that. John's already mentioned what our session is, so it's all about lean thinking and change management. So anyone who was at Cambridge last year might have come to a session that I did with Tammy on this very subject, and at that point we were very much in the kind of research stage, but now we're ready to present what we've learned over the last 18 months. So that's what we're here to do. So what's happened? Initially, I sent out an email to the Lean HE network within the UK saying, hi, I've just got a job as the Associate Director of Change at Nottingham University, and I'd really value anyone's insights into how they made change management and lean work together. And the result of that was I got bombarded with emails. No one actually had the answer, which was pretty disappointing. But lots of people had an interest in it. So off the back of that, we formed I facilitated a session, and then off the back of that, we formed a small working group. And me, Linda, and then the other colleagues on screen you can see. They all told me they were coming, but I can't see them on the list. But they've been absolutely fab, and we've been working together for about 18 months. We chatted maybe every 6 weeks or so, and that's what's created the paper that me and Linda are talking to today. I don't know why it's me and Linda today, and not the others, but it is. So there you go.
I think Gretel's here, Luke. She's messaged, and I think Lucy's here as well.
Oh, lovely. So everyone's been integral. So me and Linda are just facing it today, but it's been very much a joint effort. Started answering this question already, I suppose. But like I said, I sent that email, got all that response, and what became really apparent was that universities in the UK had some of them had change management teams, some of them had lean or CI teams, and there wasn't really a perfect model out there that we discovered. In my particular role at the time, I was coming from a very heavy lean background, moving into a change management role, and I mean, fundamentally, my question was, why do change management at all when I've just had all this success doing lean? And I think what I have learned over the last period of time is that they really can work together, and we don't need to be falling out over our different methodologies. But more on that later. So these were our 3 objectives. Wanted to show that intersection between the 2 methodologies. We wanted to show where we were as a sector, and then really what the most important thing I think from all of us was we wanted to just create something quite practical about how the two could work together within HE. And I think that I would say we've managed to achieve those three things. Just to set the scene of our definitions, I mean, you can go out there and find multiple definitions, particularly of lean, but I just particularly like the Gemba Academy, so that's the one that we've chosen for the lean definition, and then that's the change management definition that we've been working from the CMI. So whenever I, throughout this presentation and when Linda's speaking as well, whenever either of us mention lean thinking or change management, this is effectively what we're talking about. The first thing we did was do some research. So I did that workshop, and then off the back of that, the small working group was formed, and we thought, right, we can't just do what the six of us think. We need to get some more insight. We did a survey and had a really good response. We had 51 different responses. Interestingly, we had different answers from different people, but working at the same institution, and I won't mention which institutions they were. And then off the back of the survey, one of the questions we asked was, if you would like to talk to us, please do, and we'll contact you and speak to you one-to-one. And off the back of that, we did 11 follow-up interviews. And then we basically bounced those things around between the six of us to create the paper. Just going to go through a few of the key insights that we found from that research. The first thing is, although universities are all typically here to do the same thing, they all have their own individual cultures and organisational setup. And from the research we did, it was very much clear that things had typically evolved within those organisations to fit the culture that was necessary. So, for instance, I can talk about this with some certainty because I've just gone from the University of Nottingham and now I'm at DMU. At Nottingham, everyone talked about lean. At DMU, everyone talks about CI. And it's just those small things that do matter within particular institutions. The other thing I would say is that quite often the structure and the approach has evolved over time and not necessarily been a concerted effort from the institution to sit down and go, how should we structure our change enabling team or function? And things have just kind of evolved. The second thing that came out was, and this was pretty much universal, that nearly everyone was like, well, when it's a small change or, incremental change, then we do lean thinking. But it's those big, the big ERP system implementation, and that's change management. I would argue that there are things to learn on both sides, and you don't need to just do one or the other depending on the size of the change. Unsurprising, but worth mentioning anyway. Again, it came out really, really strong that if you don't get the people part of the change right, then your change will fail, and that doesn't matter whether it's a big change or a little change, lean or change management. It's all about the people, and alongside that, all about that leadership, and role modelling, and the messaging to make sure that those changes are led appropriately. Where it says structure, we don't actually mean the structure of the teams in this instance. It's more about the structured approach. So the research told us that people liked having almost a rhythm to go through, whether PDCA or DMAIC or Agile, whatever it might be. People liked that structured approach, and they felt that it helped with building good communication and stakeholder management. I mean, they can complement each other. It would have been probably this paper would have come to fruition if the answer had been that they can't. They both require people to change how they're behaving, and using the tools that you would get from each discipline together can actually give you a better overall solution. Again, this is probably not massively surprising to people, but we found that institutions could be quite siloed, and we actually had a direct quote which was something along the lines of battle of the methodologies, and I think it's on us all to not hold on to our particular preference for how we do something, because together we can be stronger. The combination toolbox, again, don't just pick a lean tool because it's the thing you know. Think a bit more broadly. Maybe there's other things out there. Something that I've become a real fan of following my time at Nottingham is something called a change impact assessment, which while I was doing lean I'd never done at all. Whereas change management, it's almost pretty much the first thing you would do is, right, let's think about the change that's going to happen and what's going to be the impact on people. And I think that could really complement some of the lean work that I did prior to my last role. The definitions were broadly recognisable, as you would, as the ones that I listed at the start. There were differences, but broadly speaking, people think of lean as process improvement and change management as the people side. I have a bit of a broader view of what lean is, but that's what our research said. There were examples of them being combined and it being successful, but not a lot. So they're typically what we found was that most of the success was on local change, and typically the larger the change became, the less successful people thought that the change was. So although there is appetite out there to combine the two methodologies, it's not necessarily going to be easy. And I suppose if typically at the moment people are using lean for those smaller changes, actually incorporating them into the larger ones, there might be a bit of a PR risk there as well. And then the last thing that came out was that there wasn't any ideal structure out there, but again, it was almost universal that it was felt that the two things could come together, that some kind of multi-skilled team would be preferable rather than a change team sitting over here and a lean team sitting over here, which was pretty much the most common example we found. And although we focused our efforts in this particular paper on change management and lean, obviously there's other things out there as well. So, you know, where does project management fit into this? I've just come out of a role where I was also supporting a portfolio management office. So how would that kind of overall reporting structure fit? Where would a BA sit in this type of team? But typically it was felt that our central team that is purposely designed for the organization that you're sitting in is better than having these multiple different teams all trying to do change in their way. A couple of reflections. They're not mutually exclusive, so both methods clearly rely on people. And you know, the two sides to lean thinking is that obviously you have the continuous improvement, but on the other side you have respect for people, and that is also central to change management. As I've said, very diverse application in the sector, and what I would like to see is probably a bit of a step back and start thinking about what the right structure is rather than what have we got at the moment. And both of them really do promote involving people, but involving people to do that continuous improvement. And so why wouldn't you bring them together in some way? So that was our research. Following on from that, we also just started mapping out what we'd seen in the different organisations that we'd spoken to. Broadly speaking, we found three standard models. The first one was there isn't a structure really. It's just that people within the organisation are expected to try and do change. So no central team, no real methodology to it, no support, just right, we've got to do some stuff, so everyone get on and do the stuff. Now, for each of these, we did a SWOT analysis, so I'll briefly touch on some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of each one. Now, for this one, we struggled really to come up with many strengths, which is interesting. But typically, if you have local ownership of things, then you will, if it's done well, you will have local ownership and accountability for it. On the flip side, then there isn't really any kind of ability to influence upwards and to get that kind of broader brush ownership over change at an institutional level. It works okay if you're not expecting to do institutional change, although I don't know anywhere that's doing that at the moment. Everywhere just seems to be wanting to do these big changes. So yeah, I'm not convinced of that one. On the opportunities side, if you have people out there who are doing this already, then you potentially, if you did want to start formalizing things, you have some ready-made change champions there. But again, the threats, I would say that there's a real threat around capacity and capability to deliver change. It might be that if there is a big change, you end up bringing in an external resource to deliver that then dissipates out again, and that learning isn't held within the organisation. You could also have, and I've seen this, I don't know, so faculty A wants to improve how it does extenuating circumstances. Faculty B also wants to improve it, and they're doing it in silos. So not always the best approach. So that was model 1. Model 2, which was the other really common one that we found, was that there is a central support, but really that they are kept quite separate. Now, this was my experience at Nottingham, where I was in the lean team, and then I moved role, and I was in the change management team, and all of a sudden, the two, I mean, actually we did talk to each other, but we were kept quite separate, and we were asked to do separate type of work. So within the change management area, typically you're doing those top-down strategic projects or programs, lots of money invested, quite often a lot of scrutiny over benefits or risk, quite a lot of potentially noise within the organisation about why that change is happening, etc. So they're off doing that, and then on the other side, you would have a lean team who are maybe doing that bottom-up delivery, probably delivering training or support as well. And ideally, the two would kind of work together. I mean, that's how you would hope it would work in a Hoshin Kanri type of way, but not always what we found when we were talking to people. So usually they were kept quite separate. Now, there are advantages to this. So in my experience at Nottingham, it was helpful in some way for the lean team to be almost independent and not aligned with these institutional driven change initiatives, because they were able to focus on the things that mattered to the shop floor, for example, and really kind of own that area. Whereas the change management team had their own kind of strategy to deliver the large programs that the university wanted to do. However, I think this is sometimes where you start getting the battle of methodologies, and battles may be too strong a word, but something that we certainly experienced at the University of Nottingham was just different language being used, but effectively to mean the same thing. So my team might go and talk to some people, use some language, and then the lean team would go and talk to them and use some different language. We're all basically saying the same thing, but from a customer point of view, that must just be confusing because you're just kind of spurting jargon at people. The other challenge with it was that people didn't know where to go to get the help that they wanted, and sometimes my team would go in to help somewhere and then find out that they'd also asked the lean team and they'd been there, or were due to go in. So you constantly kind of going around this loop of having to talk through who's doing what, when are you doing it, have you worked with that team, no, and so it just creates a little bit more bureaucracy around it. I would say the opportunities are there as well, though, to work more closely together, and that's where we were getting to at Nottingham. We were really trying to bring the two teams closer together to enable some of that cross fertilization. We also had two separate communities of practice that we were trying to slowly bring together as well. So there are some real opportunities here. Couple of threats. They were able, because both teams in a large organisation were relatively small, there was a potential for our particular team, to be just over capacity and not able to cope with demand. Whereas if the two teams were together, it probably would have been a bit easier to manage that demand that was coming through. And also funding for the two teams was different, or can be different. And again, so it just doesn't necessarily work as a model. Then the other model that we found was something called, it was a multidisciplinary team, where this typically you wouldn't just have lean thinking and change management people, you would have more. So one here we've got OD and BAs, and we felt that when we did find this model, this was probably the most effective. It meant that there were a couple of weaknesses. So the change was almost solely owned centrally, which could be disempowering for people in schools or factories, etc. But it did provide a skilled and experienced multifunctional team that you could put the right person in the right situation for the right particular project, potentially cheaper because you get that economy of scale. It meant that as a bit of an opportunity, that the language that was being used was consistent. People always knew where to go for help. But again, because this is a central team, some of the threats are around just being spread too thin. And I don't know, I haven't come across a university yet that isn't, well, I would describe as trying to do too much. So if you have a team like this, you are potentially spreading people really, really thin. And then that led us to think about, well, what would be, if we were going to design a team, what would it look like? And this is what we came up with. I have to credit Sarah, who I don't think is on the call today, but Sarah Green did all of our diagrams for us, and she's a complete whiz. Otherwise, it would have probably looked like some kind of 1980s clip art or something. But Sarah's great. And the model, and Sarah works at Warwick, and I think this is where she's trying to get her team to at the moment as well. So the research that we've done is actually having a direct impact on the work that Sarah's doing. But having this hub and spoke type model, where you have the central team, a centre of excellence, with change management, with lean thinking, maybe other teams as well, maybe someone from OD or some business analysis, etc., etc. But that they have tendrils out into the different schools and departments for them to own change in their own areas. We did have this a little bit at Nottingham, where we did have lean practitioner roles in schools and departments, but it was purely lean. Whereas this, I think, would work really well as well if you had a large systems implementation and you knew you had kind of your change champions ready made out in the wild, and you were able to activate them ready to go. So like I said, we never found this anywhere, but all of the things that we learned kind of led us to this point of going, actually, that we think this, if you were going to draw a model from scratch and not really think about what you've already got, we thought this was probably the ideal model. And then following that, we started thinking about, well, what are the principles of how you do change, or how change should be done in HE within this model. And that is where I'm going to shut up and pass over to Linda.
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, so the research was great, and we had a lot of information, a massive Miro board, as you can imagine, and we started to theme that and come up with the principles. So how did we develop our principles? Luke, you're driving, so I'll ask you to move the slide on. So it's based on our research and reflections, and those principles, when applied to the models that we've already looked at, really make those effective and useful. Underpinning that, as Luke's already said, you know, we don't explicitly in the principles call out the people focus, but it's absolutely essential for me. Part of the reason why I embrace lean and will preach about lean to anybody that will listen is that respect for people aspect, and that bringing people along with change. So that should really underpin everything. So I'm going to walk through our principles and just sort of give a bit of a practical approach to how the two, lean and change management, come together. So we ended up with 3 core principles. Number 1 being strong leadership, number 2 being about building capability, and number 3 being about applying patience. And I'm going to go through each one of those in turn. But one of the things that links them together, and again, thanks to Sarah for the amazing graphics, is where you look at those principles and how they almost provide the glue to those lean or change management activities that we're doing, and make sure that the outcomes collectively with those principles apply, give us the best realization of benefits. So looking at principle 1 and strong leadership. Like the slide to move. Okay, so as we all are probably aware, we all know change requires effective people leadership, so strong leadership. It requires, and if we're thinking in lean terms and thinking about improvement kata, thinking about Hoshin Kanri, it's about that clear vision and link to strategy. It's about starting with the why are we doing things, and ensuring that stakeholders are engaged throughout our improvement processes. Coming back to that respect for people piece, it's about empowering people to be responsible for their change, not putting change on people, and making sure that leaders are equipped and supported in doing that. So making sure that impact, and going back to the previous presentation actually, and the talk that was going on about benefits, make sure that we can see the impact, that impact is visible and recorded. So the expected outcomes from this, if we can go on to the next slide. From that strong leadership gives us adaptability. So when we're combining strong leadership with lean thinking, a culture of adaptability is fostered. That encouragement of experimentation and the embracing of failure as a learning opportunity, so supporting that concept of continuous improvement across the organisation. Secondly, it gives us strategic intent. Again, strong leadership in relation to change management, establish a clear strategic direction. That gives us clarity and helps us to navigate any uncertainty. It ensures the right initiatives are prioritised and that we optimise the use of our resources to get the maximum impact. So that was our thinking around Principle 1. So leadership is absolutely critical. And I think we've all probably had experiences where if that strong leadership isn't in place, it's very difficult to get our continuous improvement, our change initiatives to fly, because there isn't that drive from above. Then moving on to Principle 2 and about building capability. So I think it's critical, and certainly with my team at Cambridge, it's core to what we do, is making sure that we're spreading. As a small team, we can't possibly do all the continuous improvement across the university. We need to make sure that the capability is spread as far as possible and that people at the coalface have got the skills to help themselves. So what are the core elements of this Principle 2 around building capability? To offer a range of learning experiences. So around both change management, about lean thinking, about other complementary things. I think one of the core skills that is often underrated is around facilitation. You know, it's great as CI practitioners, we're expected to go along and, you know, facilitate workshops. But if we've not been given some of those basic skills about how do you facilitate a room full of people to get the outcome that you deserve or that you need. It's about upskilling university leadership, and not necessarily in the core tools, but in to give them the skills to support their teams to use the core tools. Some of you may remember myself and my team did a presentation at the Melbourne conference about Lean for Leaders and how we were going to develop Lean for Leaders. Well, we're actually about to sort of go live with our live version of that course. So watch this space. We'll launch that in the future. It's about building a searchable knowledge base so that people, even if they've been on training, they might be a bit rusty. Can they find the answers to those quick questions they need? It's about making sure that we're able to understand where the high impact process improvement is so that we can cherry pick and get that impact and start to tell the story so that those people who perhaps are a little bit cynical can see where the positives can be, and therefore start to build confidence in bigger change. So again, as with Principle 1, what would be the expected outcomes of if we were able to sort of fulfill this principle of building capability? For one, we'd have more engaged staff. So confidence in lean thinking, in lean tools, empower staff to take ownership of improvements in the daily work that they do. When everyone is equipped to take part in small scale improvement activities, they then will be more confident in that structured environment for shared learning, for experimentation and continuous development. That then leads to that energized change culture. Building change management capabilities along with those lean thinking capabilities will help to reduce frustration and resistance to change. It therefore will promote a shared understanding of techniques and the practical application of those techniques so that there'll be a more energised, collaborative and forward-looking culture across the institution. So that's 2. Principle 3, it's about applying patience. I think we've all learnt in the roles that we do to apply patience in those roles. I certainly have in the 20+ years I've been at my institution. So we need to commit to a long-term and systemic approach to applying lean and change management. This is where we need to apply our patience. So it's about committing time and resources. It's about focusing on ensuring that the business is ready for change and that co-creation is enabled. It's giving time to evaluate approaches so that everyone's comfortable and that we're happy and that those approaches are landing. About building a lessons learned library, telling those stories, lessons learned, case studies, stories, where have things worked well, where have they not worked so well. And it's about taking time to listen. We're all so busy these days, particularly since COVID, particularly since we've been doing things online and back-to-back on online meetings. It's not often that we actually take that time to listen to our stakeholders, to the people at the front line, to our teams. And it's about having continuous improvement as an agenda item on every team meeting. Thinking about you know, some of the quotes that we've had that we had in the survey, you know, bite-sized changes help in implementing large-scale projects. So if lean can open the door to the bigger change, then it's a win. So what expected outcomes might we have if we commit to that long-term systemic approach, if we apply patience? We start to embed a culture of continuous improvement. Applying patience within lean thinking helps to cultivate psychological safety, giving individuals and teams the confidence to speak up and acknowledge the inefficiencies in their areas. That then creates space for deeper analysis, accurate root cause identification, and therefore more resilient, long-lasting improvements. We would expect to see adoption. Successful change management depends on people embracing new ways of working, new systems and new behaviours. Patience allows individuals to connect with the change at their own pace, enabling that gradual alignment, learning and development of trust and confidence in the process. And so I think it's about patience on both sides, both those people who are impacted by the change, but also those people implementing the change. And often we see in big transformation programs, there's a lack of patience when they're trying to roll out those big transformations. So those are our three principles. We thought we'd also, to sort of sum up, give some top tips for combining lean and change management, as I say, based on the research that we did, the experience that we had in the group. We had a good range of experience. Tip 1, don't forget to consider the culture. And Luke alluded to this earlier as well. Really understand the culture of your organisation and tailor your approach accordingly. Now that could come down to the language that you use. For example, I was writing a paper a little while ago, and you know, I think the term Kaizen was in there, and on reflection, probably not the right term, because the audience for that paper, they'd have no clue, and they would immediately be turned off by the use of what they would deem as technical terms. Think about the size of the change. Start small, look for quick wins, look for early adopters. Don't say no. And I think the previous session, the previous presentation was about actually having to balance demand against capacity, but think carefully before saying no for the sake of sticking to the methodology. Do what we can, that respect for people piece. Think about peer influence, find advocates for yourself in your approach. in your institution. Use them to influence their peers. Sometimes reach out to the Lean HE community. If you've got Advocate or other networks that you might be involved with, because certainly when we're dealing with academics, from a Cambridge perspective, if some of my senior leadership hear that perhaps Oxford are doing something similar, or we're collaborating, then that actually helps and starts to open doors. Always have the end in mind. Use the methodologies and the tools that will help you to get there. And use the tools that land well. We had a session this morning with some of our practitioners, and we were saying, we teach them quite a lot of tools, but we don't necessarily like them all. And as a team, when we're being practical, we use the tools that land well with us and that land well with the people that we're working with. And then finally, be adaptable. Be ready to adapt and evolve, to change. Remember, what works today might not work tomorrow. So let's practice what we preach, continuously improve the approach that we take. So, in summary, the aim that we set out when Luke first asked that question on the Lean HE England JISC mail, and then we got together and we started to work together as a group, was to provide insights to everyone. So I put the link to the paper itself. That's now on the Lean HE website. So feel free. Yeah, Luke's never asking a question again. Didn't realise how much work it would involve. So feel free to use that paper. As we've said, it's very much based on the research that we've done. And there's no right or wrong answer at the moment. There's just suggestions of how you can move forward. We need to remember that the sector is ever changing, so we need to adapt to that. And feel free to use the paper as a guide to support decision making if you're looking at how you're going to adapt your service and your delivery in your institution. So we just want to leave you with that lovely graphic again. Remember, lean thinking, change management, bring them together using those principles and you'll get the best benefits realization. And on that point, any questions? I've seen the chat swirling, but I've been trying not to look at it.
Yeah, thanks very much, Linda. And look, yeah, the chat's gone viral. I'm going to have to try and recreate it for the benefit of the recording. But I guess one of the first things to highlight is that I think Luke has said that, well, first of all, Gretel wasn't here, Lucy wasn't here, Sarah wasn't here. So I would, if you feel that you would like to, please make yourselves known to the rest of us, just to prove that you are here, because I'm going to involve you in some of the questions and answers as well, because Lucy and Gretel have been working their way through some of the questions. Gretel, lovely to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you, John. I was waving at the start, but I could see myself, but obviously because there's so many faces, but I didn't want my face gorming out while Linda and Luke were presenting. But yes, I'm here, and lovely to see people that I've known for a few years, and lovely to see people that I don't know. I was doing my best to field some of the questions.
Indeed. Yeah, well, I'll get through them as much as I can. Sarah, hi there.
Hi there, you're right. Yeah, good to be here and to listen to this activity come to life. And it's nice to see people interacting and asking questions. So yeah, really pleased to be part of the session.
Excellent. And Lucy, is Lucy still with us?
Am I right in thinking this is
Yes, I'm still here. I've been trying to field some of the questions as well. It's really excellent to see it all after 18 months of working on it become something that we can share with you guys.
Excellent. I was just actually going to say, I mean, Luke, kind of flippantly, partly seriously, so I'm never asking a question again at the end. I think one thing to point out to the kind of wider group is no one asked Luke to do this. You know, it's this is very much self-driven, and he asked the wider community for help and for, you know, support, ideas. So I think if there's there's lots of great messages coming through here, but the other one for me is, you know, if you think there's a gap in what we do, don't wait for someone else to do it for you. reach out to the wider community and start the process. You know, very much along the lines of don't ask permission, seek forgiveness, or words to that effect. But anyway, enough of that. Thank you very much again for the presentation, but also all the work that that's gone into underpinning this. So I'm going to go through the questions as best I can. Where are we? Okay, so, and I know you've answered some of these, but I'm going to go, I think, to Bill first of all. So as a work psychologist, he applauds your blending of change management and lean. There are many models or approaches in the field of organisational development and change. Is there a model or approach that you like, or more importantly, you think could work best with lean? So I think you've probably answered that towards the end of the presentation, but in, I guess, 20, 30 seconds, do you want to come back on that just for the audience?
I think that it doesn't matter as long as you're putting people first. So if the methodology is aligned to the principle of considering the people who are going to have to go through that change, then after that, I'm really ambivalent about it. And so at Nottingham, there was didn't really get into this in the presentation, but there was a lean team, there was a change management team, there was another change management team in another department, there was a service design team, and there was an OD team. And it drove me mad because we were all trying to do the same thing. Effectively, we were trying to do the right thing for the organisation and the people in the right way. Yeah, so I don't think it matters. I think what matters more is make a conscious decision about how you're going to structure your change functions, rather than having a lack of institutional strategy around it.
Okay, thank you very much. Question from Ricardo, which has been answered on the chat, but I'm going to throw it out again. So you put up a number of kind of diagrams of where the change and lean functions sit and the different roles within that. So Ricardo's asking if you could clarify how a business analyst, professional business analyst role fits in to those various Venn diagrams. Sarah.
I mean, Sarah's got a hand up. I'll let Sarah answer it.
I mean, I think you know, much to what Luke just said. There's lots of different organisational roles that really support and guide the work that you might do within a lean initiative or a change initiative, or that combination of both those things together. And I think the BA role is, you know, in Warwick we sit alongside. We're a peer. So my change team has a peer network that's exactly the same replicated in the BA team. So I'm constantly working alongside them from a change management perspective, and we have a very fluid kind of relationship where sometimes they'll pick up a bit more change, sometimes my change managers pick up a bit more BA work, and we have that kind of fluid interaction. And I would see a BA as having that kind of really they get their fingers in a lot of pies, don't they, BAs, in terms of, you know, lean approaches, process improvement, and the bigger kind of change projects as well. So there's a lot of integral roles that can't be kind of, I guess, separated out. So I would see them as a big part of it, and different universities had different structures of how they would sit alongside each other. Linda, I'll let you pick up.
Yeah, I'm just going to say from my experience, I started as a BA. I joined the University of Cambridge as a BA, and it was through that role that I realised that, you know, I was very much in IT and implementing systems. We were implementing expensive IT on top of poor process, and sort of started to err towards that that concept of actually we should be improving our processes, and then discovered lean, and the rest is sort of history. So I think BAs are integral, just, yeah, different institutions, it's vast, the variation as to how people are used.
Well, we definitely have a few BAs on the call, so they're in violent agreement with a lot of what you're saying, which is good. Next one I'm going to pick up on, which has again been answered on the chat, and I'm guessing that this will vary depending on the organisation. But the question was: are the CI and the change management units funded separately by universities? Different budget headings. So I guess that's the gist of the question. Difficult to answer generically, I would guess.
I would agree. I think it varies. I think probably each one of us who work for an institution in the group would probably have different funding models. So it's how long's a piece of string, really? My team currently sit within the team that the change specialists and change partners work in, so we are under the same, but we're on program like 3-year, 5-year funding. So arguably, it should be business as usual funding, but.
Lucy,
I think I think it also depends as to whether it's seen as a strategic project or whether it's being driven by the grassroots, because there are a number of strategic projects that come in that answer the things that are important to the university, but they don't always address those things that are important to the individual teams, and that are really causing those issues in terms of making the changes that will make more efficiencies and effectiveness, that will allow those strategic changes to come through more efficiently.
Thank you, Lucy. There's quite a number of observations, comments on the chat, which I might not read out all of them, but I had a question. There was quite a lot of reference to leadership, and the strong leadership was one of the first principles, and then upskilling of leadership, I guess. So maybe a former question here. How easy do you think that is? Because ultimately, and obviously leadership runs through an organisation. There's leaders at every level. So I guess that's one thing. But in order for leaders to recognise that they actually perhaps need to be upskilled, they would need to demonstrate an element of humility, self-awareness. So with that in mind, how easy do you think it is to actually make this happen?
Thanks for that, John. I think your first point with leaders are at all levels, and when we were talking about leadership in the paper, we very much didn't want to just focus on senior leadership. It was actually anyone can be a leader of change, and I think that the reason I'm saying that is because I think the challenge in developing that skill set within leaders will vary dependent on where they happen to sit within the organisation. Senior leadership, I don't have the answer. Sarah and Gretel have got the hands up though, so they will.
Sarah?
Yeah, so I think, I've got some senior leaders that, one senior leader at the university is a Lean Six Sigma black belt. They understand the concepts of fail fast. They understand all of those techniques and approaches. We've got others at levels below them that have got no concept of what lean actually is or what it means. And what we don't have is that consistency of understanding within the leadership to allow people to kind of really get to the bottom of what needs to be done. But I think fundamentally what I'm seeing a lot of is that we get change initiatives that focus very much on managing the change, but that might be a lift and shift. So they might do digital transformation or digital changes that are a lift and shift, where they're not going into how can we actually make those processes better? How can we actually improve that as part of what we're trying to deliver as a whole product? So, time gets squeezed. We lose the ability to get that process improvement as part of a bigger change. And I think if there's an education at a leadership level that they can combine, they can be two of the same thing. You're not going to lift and shift something that still needs process improvement.
And Gretel.
Mine's a bit more sort of not generic, but as you've got different types of leaders going through an organisation, I think would you consider different types of upskilling. So as at middle, not middle leadership, but the ones, the sandwiches in the middle, it's as important perhaps to understand some of the methodologies, and it wouldn't necessarily be lean thinking. It could be continuous improvement. It could be BA, learning to manage and help lead in those. And maybe at more senior level, it's about overall principles like measures to look at benefits, to know that things are working, and learning. So I would be boiling it down to various essences of leadership, maybe from what we've drawn together, but what good leadership is, keeping people focused on overall purpose, and how do we know we're getting there.
Excellent. Listen, thank you very much. It's great to see you all again. Fantastic presentation. Oh, sorry, I was just about to close off, but have we got? Yes, we've got another question. The last question. Apologies. Does anyone have any recommendations for trying to get senior leadership to engage with lean for the first time? Maybe I need to develop a lean elevator pitch and ask for some funding to upskill staff. We've got 5 wise heads, I'm not including myself in this. Any thoughts?
Lean game.
Would you like to expand, Gretel?
Well, I mean, I'm now dredging, aren't I? Because I've been around, but we used something called the lean game, where you take, and it could be, we did it with leaders, where you're manufacturing ships, and you're taking people through different iterations of continuous improvement and getting the most efficient and the most perfect ships. So it brings data to alive, it brings people working together alive, it brings what matters to the customer alive, and workflow, something like that, and some kind of reflection at the end may well engage leaders. And there's all sorts of games that you could use, but we did something on ships using stickle bricks.
Excellent, thanks, Gretel. And we've also got Ray with his hand up. Ray, great to see you, all the way from Canada, where it must be, what, 10:30 or something like that in the morning?
8:30 actually right
8:30.
now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the sun's just starting to rise. It's a beautiful morning. It's about -2, so fantastic.
Excellent.
Fantastic
Nice to
day
see
for
you.
a bike ride to work. You bet. So to answer the question, a number of years ago, I met with our provost to get them even to buy into this specific initiative, which was, I'm going to say, lean continuous improvement in nature. And he told me that they always like to see data-driven decisions. And he actually used the term public humiliation. So for this specific project, is quite specific. He wanted to know, how did we compare as a university to our peer group? Where did we rank? Were we top of the pack? Were we middle of the pack? Where were we? So when I gathered the benchmarking, we were almost dead last. We were second from the bottom. And when I brought forward that report and he shared it with colleagues, guess what? Everybody was excited to move us up that ladder. So that was the tactic that worked for me. And again, using the ADKAR model, we tried different approaches. And I don't know if this is going to work with an executive, but they need to understand the WIFM, what is in it for me as a personal benefit. We tried everything. We had different change approaches for the magnitude of this project. We tried, first of all, the funding or cost savings. That went over. That was a huge mistake, as a matter of fact, back at that time, because the academia saw it as a way for the admin to claw back funding from the academic side. So we quickly changed. We huddled. We changed strategies, and we tied into sustainability, a reduction in greenhouse gases, reduction in landfill waste, and things of that nature, reduction in paper consumption. That got the project rolling, but really, we had to resort to the public humiliation, and I had to do it down to the academic units. I did all the data for each of the respective faculties. The provost called me in Dean's Council, and boy, I tell you, that meeting, I was ready to call campus security to escort me back so I wouldn't have been taken out. And then the last resort we worked that, as I mentioned, that worked with the senior executive was specifically what is in it for me and making it a personal. What is the personal benefit that they will see from that? So.
Thank you very much indeed for sharing that, Ray.
You're welcome.
I'm going to, Luke kicked us off for this session. I'm going to leave the final word to Luke.
I think my biggest success in highlighting the importance of the work that we do with senior leaderships is when you find an advocate, and it's sort of alluding to what Sarah was talking about, but finding, and preferably an academic, it doesn't have to be, who operates at that level and who can advocate for you, and getting them bought in to what you're trying to do. That is my go-to method every time.
Excellent. Thank you. Listen, I think the level of engagement in this session, including in the chat, just demonstrates that you've landed on a sweet spot of you've piqued a lot of interest and questions and chat. So fantastic. And listen, thanks very much again for your time, for sharing the work that you've done. It's excellent. Really appreciate it. So with that, we are now moving into a 15-minute break. So go off, do some cartwheels, get a cup of tea, from fresh air. But we'll see you back here in 15 minutes for the next session. So where are we just now? We're actually on time. That's very unusual for me. 3:30 p.m. in the UK, and we will reconvene in 15 minutes. Thank you very much indeed.
Bye.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. And welcome to anyone who has just joined us. Our next session has the title of Driving Better Outcomes Through Data-Informed Experiential Learning at Seneca Polytechnic. And it is my pleasure to introduce Shipra Kulkarni.
Hi, John.
Hello, Shipra. I'm just going to read out your biography, so everyone knows a little bit more about your background, but I'm delighted that you could join us today. Excuse me. Shipra is a continuous improvement practitioner, currently leading the CI space at Seneca Works, the experiential and work integrated learning division at Seneca Polytechnic. She has worked on projects and process improvement initiatives with post-secondary institutions at UCL, London, University of Greenwich, also in London, York University, Toronto, and presently at Seneca Polytechnic in Toronto. Since moving to Canada, she has completed a Black Belt certification in Lean Six Sigma. Some of her recent projects include streamlining the regulatory, easy for me to say, reporting processes for unpaid work placements, collaborating with partners to develop AI-centric tools to create a career profile for students, and developing a tracker to systemize program review cycles. She has also worked on data analysis, reporting, and dashboard development, and enjoys learning ways to create workflow automations. She firmly believes in creating a balance between the responsible use of technology and human touch points as a foundation for continuous improvement. So with that, Shipra, I'm handing over to you. Welcome once again.
Thank you so much, John. Thanks a lot. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to present today. I'm going to share my screen with the audience. Give me just one moment. John, could you just give me a thumbs up if you're able to see my screen?
Yep, all good.
Okay, great, great. So hello, everybody. My name is Shipra Kulkarni, and John has already provided an introduction for me, so I won't introduce myself again. But I'm a continuous improvement manager at Seneca Works, and I'm currently an interim operations manager there. And my presentation today will focus on driving better outcomes through data-informed experiential learning. So this is all about how this is about describing our journey at Seneca and within our team on building data dashboards for work integrated learning and experiential learning. Before I start my presentation, I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement, as we always do here in Canada, to formally recognize and respect Indigenous peoples as the traditional stewards of the land and honoring their enduring relationships with their territory. Seneca's campuses are located on the lands stewarded by the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat nations. We acknowledge Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of Credit First Nation, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa First Nations. We are all interconnected as treaty people with shared obligation to learn, respect, honor, and sustain. Today, this land continues to be home for many diverse Indigenous people, including First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. We are grateful for the continuous unceasing Indigenous stewardship of these lands and waters. So this is a bit of an overview about what I would be talking about in my presentation today, mainly about the importance of data metrics in the WIL landscape. And when I say WIL, it stands for Work Integrated Learning. I work within the work integrated learning space, and my kind of projects focus on work integrated learning and experiential learning. So that's what I will kind of focus on today in terms of data-driven decision making. the journey from manual data reporting to dashboards, which is an ever-evolving process, as most of us know, as lean practitioners, as process improvement practitioners, sharing data experience with others. So this is something that I really wanted to share with the rest of you here, and fostering environment of learning and continuous improvement. So how this kind of project helped our team foster an environment of continuous improvement within the team and across the board as well. This is a bit of an overview before I kind of delve into the data stuff. I know we have a lot of folks from outside of Canada. So just a quick introduction about the Canadian higher education landscape and the experiential landscape within Ontario, within Toronto, where Seneca is located. So some aspects of the Canadian higher education landscape Canada's higher education system is pretty diverse and robust, and comprises of universities, colleges, and polytechnics. While universities focus on academic research-based degrees, colleges and polytechnics offer more career-oriented degrees and diplomas and applied training. There's a lot of multiculturalism within Canada, and that's one of Canada's greatest strengths is its multicultural environment. Campuses are vibrant with students from around the world, which fosters global perspectives and cross-cultural collaboration. Canadian institutions are globally recognized for high academic standards, rigorous quality assurance, and innovative teaching. Obviously, degrees from Canada are respected worldwide, and we have many institutions that rank among the top globally. In terms of experiential learning or opportunities beyond the classroom, this is a key feature of Canadian education, which is hands-on learning, and through co-op programs, internships, and research opportunities. These experiences bridge theory and practice and prepare students for real-world challenges. Some of the emerging themes that we've noticed over the last few years are the digitization and automation in everything we do. The nature of work is ever changing. Institutions are integrating tech-driven tools. They're offering flexible learning and aligning programs with future-ready skills like AI, sustainability, and remote collaboration. Moving on to work integrated learning in Ontario itself. These are some of the kind of quick facts that nearly 50% of Ontario's post-secondary students take part in a work integrated learning or a WIL opportunity, be it a co-op, be it an internship or field placement. And faculty who teach a course with a WIL component are more likely to report that WIL should be increased. So there should be an increase in the number of co-op opportunities that higher education institutions offer within as a part of students' programs, academic programs. There's dedicated support for students to connect them with the right opportunities. This is something that's very essential in terms of work integrated learning. We have to have some kind of structure within the institution that provides dedicated support in terms of career advising, in terms of connecting them with employers, etc., and providing students with the right internships, right work integrated learning opportunities. There are also some challenges that have been seen in this regard, and some of them are quality of placement or work term opportunity, which means employers may not fully understand academic expectations or student capabilities. Some placements may prioritize more administrative tasks over skills development. There may be a lack of structure in the opportunity that has been provided. Then comes the number of placements per program. So it could be limited employer awareness or engagement with specific programs. Due to economic turndowns, there may be hiring freezes. There's pressure on staffs to secure last-minute placements as well. In terms of maintaining employer relationships, employers may not see the long-term return on investment. In terms of co-ops, there might be increased workload to build relationships with the employers or vice versa with institutions. And these could, and there could be staff turnover on either side that can disrupt continuity and stability between the relationships that higher education professionals create with the industry and with the employers. In terms of balancing experiential learning with classroom workload, there could be a lack of integration between faculty and work integrated learning teams. Students may not be adequately prepared for time management. So this is something that also need to be addressed by every institution. Moving on to who we are at Seneca Polytechnic. So I'm a part of Seneca Works, which is the work integrated learning or experiential learning arm at Seneca Polytechnic. And Seneca Works is kind of a brand in itself, in that we take pride in providing holistic support to the students in terms of their experiential journey, from workshops to career advising to supporting them in their job search. We have projects that we are running that focus on using or leveraging AI tools that enable students to create their career profiles and enhance their career journey. We also have experiential learning for all. That's kind of a goal for the institution, and it's a strategic goal. Therefore, we emphasize on students successfully completing at least one work experience to understand the industry and make informed decisions. And we also create supports and resources for lifelong learning. So our motto is a student is a student is a student. So therefore, the various new modes of learning, be it hybrid, be it online, be it classroom training, they've opened up a lot of avenues of learning, whether you're a student, whether you're a professional. So we kind of try and bridge that gap through programs and offering micro-credentials for every point in a student's academic or professional journey. So that's what Seneca Works is all about. I will now kind of move into the real deal, the data stuff that I'd like to present you guys about. So basically, what problem are we solving was really the first question when we were looking at the amount of data we had and the amount of data reporting that we were doing in terms of providing insights to different user groups, different programs, chairs, program coordinators, etc. So we were looking at a solution where it could be holistic and it could answer questions without easily without for users. So there was a need to kind of find a long-term solution for our data needs, and it arose from a number of factors over a long period of time. So we kind of needed to establish the why before attempting this change. So the first kind of couple of questions we asked ourselves and the team is, what kind of data are we being requested, and what decisions will this dashboard support, or what decisions will this solution support really? Typically, in terms of what data we were being requested was placement numbers. So total jobs secured per program, total jobs secured per term. We have something called self-secured jobs, which students find on their own. And when I use the word jobs, I really mean opportunities in terms of co-ops or internships or work placements. They are not really career jobs, so they are jobs related to work integrated learning specifically. Then quality indicators. These were also some insights that or metrics that we were asked to present. what is the student evaluation data looks like. Are the employers satisfied with the students working with them? Are the students satisfied with the employment opportunities that they're getting? What is the employer engagement like? How many number of active employers do we have on the system? How many repeat employers do we have on the system? What's the sector distribution like? Then student outcomes, so number of applied students versus those who've secured an opportunity. So these were some of the questions that we kind of, they were kind of common overall, which we saw we were answering. And then the next question was, what decisions will this dashboard support? So, or will this solution support? So one was program planning, so adjusting curriculum or placement timings based on trends. Resource allocation, so basically identifying programs that need more support or need more outreach to the employers, to the industry. Employer engagement strategy, so targeting sectors or employers with high impact. And student support services, so identifying students at risk or any student that needing intervention, and strategic reporting as well. The other thing was identifying the user groups. So who exactly would consume the data? Who are our users? Our biggest users are faculty members or academics. So they want to see how placements align with learning outcomes. Program coordinators, who are also academic members of staff, who need to track placement rates and employer feedback. Program chairs to advocate for resources and curriculum changes. And obviously senior leadership of the institution to focus on strategic outcomes, equity, etc. And each user group has different priorities. So the solution must be customizable or segmented to meet their needs. The other question that we also thought of was, or discussed, was what matters to the user? Are we gathering and presenting the data that actually matters, whether this is a viable long-term strategy? So does this lead to meaningful placements for students? Are we meeting placement targets across programs? Are employers satisfied and returning? So these are some of the questions that we kind of asked ourselves and asked the team. Again, the viability of strategy is also based on the dashboard being sustainable with current resources. So during the project, we had quite a few resources who worked, we had a team that worked on the project on building the dashboard, but it also depended on, once we're back to business as usual, whether the monitoring of the project was sustainable, monitoring of the dashboard was sustainable or not, and whether it could evolve with the changing program needs. Training on data interpretation and why it mattered. Even the best dashboard can be misused or misinterpreted or misunderstood. So people don't know what that means. So basically clarifying what the dashboard or what the solution really means and what users need to look at. So these are the kind of questions that we thought of, and something that you could think of if you as an institution or as a team are looking to build something like a dashboard for your data metrics. So the first big step for us was, where do we start? And how did the idea of the data reports and dashboards actually come into picture? So some of the things, once we answered all the questions from the previous step, we actually moved to forming the idea of a dashboard in mind. But where do we start? And I think the most important thing to remember here is to start with what you know and what you're comfortable with, and then start with your immediate area of focus. So don't do too many things at once. Just start with what you actually know, and that's how we kind of started it. For us, it was, what kind of questions and requests did we get on a regular basis? What do we typically report and have been reporting in the past? And the rest will obviously come later once you actually start answering those questions as a part of the dashboard. Some of the very common questions that we got was how many students are seeking versus how many students have secured jobs, how many employers post in a year, how many employers post in a semester, what is the ratio of job postings to total seeking students. So these were some of the questions, some of the data that we were being requested, and we wanted that was kind of the starting point for us. And it kind of then led to the ideation of creating a report for our current data and then also creating a report for our historical data. So bringing this obviously led to bringing multiple teams on board once we were kind of comfortable with the idea of building a dashboard. And as we all know, a dashboard development project cannot be completed in a silo. And for us, this meant getting the required buy-ins from various teams. So our primary stakeholder was the operations team within Seneca Works. The operations team works very closely to kind of refine the data, present the data. We have a data team which does all the data reporting for the rest of the institution. So the operations team works very closely with other teams and colleagues for information that's input into the system. And I will move to the data sources in my next slide. But we also wanted colleagues who actually input information to be on board with this, because data was impacted by information provided by WIL staff, so Seneca Works staff, employers, and students. We also required buy-in from Seneca Works leadership. So we conveyed the value of a WIL-specific dashboard and emphasized on the metrics, because as we all know that a snapshot or a dashboard tells you the health of the program when it comes to the number of students on the program, how many are getting jobs, how many are deferring to another term, etc. So metrics are important. And finally, but not the least, the IT services team at our institution at Seneca Polytechnic, because they kind of helped us set up the integration pipeline to develop the dashboards. So we basically worked with two main data sources for our dashboard. We had to make sure that our data came from a single source of truth. The team came to the conclusion that integrating two sources of data to create visually appealing dashboards that answered our key questions was the most appropriate solution to the way we interacted with our job and student data. So the first one is our data within the WIL system, within the work integrated or experiential learning space that we've been using for quite some time now, and we work with a platform called Orbis, Orbis Communications. I'm not sure if people are familiar with it, but a lot of educational institutions across North America use Orbis, which has now been taken over by an American company called Simplicity. They got bought over a few years back. So, and they are basically a career service platform for higher education institutions. So that's what we work with. And the second kind of source of data was our student information system. So we needed to make sure that that the data is consistent. For example, Orbis has work term records from winter 2025 term, and they need to have the same information in the student information system. So basically cross-referencing and making sure that the data is accurate, and also making sure that the data is consistent across databases. One thing that I kind of missed on touching upon was that the information on Orbis has everything to do with our work integrated learning data. So everything from students' work term records, students' activities or engagement, employer information. We have our job board on it. We have job postings on it, work term records, etc. So everything to do with kind of experiential learning is what is housed within the FIRST system. So once we looked at the data sources, we also had to kind of make sure that we consider data quality and data integrity. So what does it mean? This means basically defining and validating data rules. So setting clear guidelines for what data should be collected, how should it be formatted, what qualifies as valid data. So only active placements, for example, or verified employer contacts, etc. Then validating key attributes. So this involves checking that critical fields like student ID, program code, etc. they're present, they're accurate, they've been formatted correctly, they're consistent across systems. And why it matters is because these attributes are often used to filter data or group data or even report data. And if there are errors here, they can lead to misleading insights, basically. Resolving issues. So when data is missing or incorrect, there needs to be a process where we identify the issue, we correct it, and we prevent any recurrence of the same issue again. This could be done either as an automated system or a manual workflow. In terms of data integrity, it includes implementing controls, so strict access controls in terms of who has access to the data sources, whether validation rules in data entry forms, automated alerts for anomalies, etc. And why it mattered was because it helped catch errors early and maintain a high degree of data quality over time. The other couple of things we also had to consider was managing the data sources, so where the data is coming from and whether how often it's updated and who owns it. And consistency obviously is key because the same definitions and formats we had to make sure were being used across reports and dashboards, and data was being interpreted the same way across the board by all users. The next step was to choose the right tools and platform. Choosing the right platform or choosing a platform was pretty straightforward for us because Microsoft is used across the institution. We use Microsoft tools for pretty much everything we do at work. So it was kind of an easy answer to decide that we would use Power BI to host our reports. Also because it's easy to use. There's a lot of familiarity because staff members, faculty, users are very familiar with Microsoft tools, also in terms of viewing and navigation. And it's easy to export program-specific data. In terms of some of the automations that we also built in eventually as an improvement in the process was using Alteryx and Python. And we worked very closely with our IT services team to run the code to highlight any inconsistencies in data and flag them. And using Alteryx was kind of a game changer for us. For multiple job postings, so we have job postings which have multiple jobs within the same posting. So, for example, a bank posts a job and they will have several different postings within the same, several different jobs within the same posting. So we call them multiple job postings. We used Python to come up with a system to accurately count the number of job postings, and that significantly improved our accuracy rate. Earlier, this was all being done manually, and we were actually going into the system and counting how many jobs have been posted within a posting. But then once we moved to Python, we actually were able to achieve a 98% accuracy rate, so almost 100% accuracy rate. So other than that, in terms of building code and workflow, some of the things that we also looked at was if the criteria did not meet, is it flagging the issue, or if flags are coming back to us when we run the code on Alteryx, is the right investigation being done for that? We also did some audits, so also looked at what we missed or what kind of data was being fed into the system as well. So kind of a lot of detective work kind of going into the data cleaning part. So these are some of the challenges we faced when we were actually building the dashboard as a part of the project. And one of them was identifying what was needed, what were the actual metrics that were needed by the user group. Initially, there was a lack of clarity around which metrics were essential for decision making. And without clear goals or KPIs, data collection and analysis may have been misaligned with actual needs. So that was a big thing for us to make sure that we were actually presenting the right information on the dashboard. The other thing, in addition to presenting the right information, was too much information. So a lot of people wanted a lot of things, which created a lot of it looked very busy, to be honest. The dashboard looked very busy. It didn't look like a dashboard at all. So we realized that there was excessive or irrelevant data, which was overwhelming the users. A lot of them did not need a lot of that data. So we had to really trim down and actually look at the real numbers that, or the insights that users wanted to look at to increase the effectiveness of the dashboard. Not being user friendly for mobile users. So that was one thing that we had not really looked at, but then we considered, because a lot of people look at these things using their mobile phone. So the interface had to be user friendly, which was one of the challenges that we had actually not considered earlier, but then it did come up eventually. Insufficient training. So users were not adequately trained on how to use the dashboard. We did run some trainings initially, but then we realized that there was more that was needed. We probably made it the assumption that, well, they know that because they've done it before, but they were more used to looking at spreadsheets. They were not used to looking at visualizations and something like a dashboard. And finally, data entry errors while processing data. So this was more to do with people who actually worked on the data sources. And we realized that a lot of people or a lot of staff members did not know how to accurately input data, which was leading to manual input mistakes. And that sort of popped up when we started using Alteryx, where it used to flag up saying, this does not look right, you need to correct it. So missing fields, incorrect formats, that sort of compromised the accuracy and reliability, which we had to correct. So where we are at right now, where are we now? So we've been reviewing the challenges and working on addressing them. We've been addressing pain points of inconsistent data. We've been prioritizing solutions based on impact, based on feasibility. We've been collaborating across teams. So the IT department, employers, academics, etc., to implement these fixes. And why it really matters is because it has ensured that the dashboard and data processes evolve to meet actual needs of the users. We've also put in standardized definitions across the board to avoid confusion. What we realized, and this has happened in some of my previous projects as well, where definitions have not been standardized and people end up not knowing what something means. So there has to be a shared language across the board. For example, terms like what is a placement, or what is a secure self-secured job, or what does an active employer mean, things like that. So ensuring all stakeholders interpret data the same way. And why it matters is because without standard definitions, data can be misinterpreted, leading to inconsistent reporting and decisions. The other thing we did was to create SOPs. So standard operating procedures was important. Setting them up was important. And again, creating shared language and basically showing how to kind of go about interacting with the dashboard for users, and also for those who set up the dashboard and who were actually at the back end to understand how the dashboard works. So from both ends, really, we set up SOP documentation. And finally, improved visualization and user interaction. So this kind of focuses on making dashboards more intuitive and visually clear, and allowing users to customize their views according to what they wanted to see, because a lot of faculty, a lot of academics only wanted to see program data. So kind of training them on how they can customize the dashboard to only see program specific data for their own programs. And good design obviously improves engagement, which we kind of saw over time once we started improving our visualization and improving the insights that we actually showed on the dashboard. In terms of continuous improvement itself, we've been continuously monitoring the dashboard since we launched. We had a soft launch a few months back, where we let a small group of people to actually work with the dashboard, provide us feedback. And we've been flexible and adapting to changing business needs. So we know that we need to accommodate any future changes and represent our current state accurately. So we know that we should not be going and changing anything at source. That cannot be changed, because that will show up on the dashboard incorrectly if it's not the right kind of, if it's not accurate data. We've been conducting data workshops with staff and various user groups, and this has really helped us kind of communicate and spread the message about the usage of the dashboard. We now have periodic reviews. So we have a periodic review once every semester, where we kind of regroup and talk about how it's been, how the response has been, how the user engagement has been. Constant testing and validation. We have a data team which constantly tests and validates this data. Just as a side note, we do not have an overnight kind of update of data. It's something that we have to do. Currently, we've been doing it manually, and we are looking at every semester, and we are looking at a solution where we can actually have an overnight update of the dashboard. And finally, I'd say keep it simple. If you overcomplicate it, it just gets messy. So if you're building a dashboard, I would say just keep it simple and keep it basic, so that your user groups are able to actually engage with it and don't feel frustrated if it's not working for them. So some of the key takeaways from this kind of project that we undertook was that we need to understand that process improvements and changes take time. So this is not an overnight process. There are a lot of moving parts. It takes time to kind of see that improvement through an initiative like this. You might not see it in the same semester, but you might actually start seeing the changes in the next semester, which is how we kind of started seeing those improvements now. Focus on the metrics that matter the